It was stopping it that I couldn't be sure we had done last time.
Yeah.
Unmute ourselves. Hey Garrett, can you hear us?
Didn't know that.
Does it look like?
No, there's a,
You guys hear me?
Yeah, can you hear us?
I cannot hear you.
Jamie.
how did she leave so quickly?
Even if you unmute that, the speakers themselves might have a mute button on them. So if it's red, it might be muted.
No, it was blue.
Should be green.
How about, is there anything over there?
Green
that's
looks
red?
good. Green looks good. Green looks good. Let me get Jamie. Hold on. Since she's the expert. She's here. So we started
Clerk's office.
a minute or two early.
You don't hear us?
No. Ryan's missing too, I guess.
And I thought Barbara said last time that she would be away and be
Did she
coming.
hide
Oh,
somewhere
really?
in particular? Did she go someplace?
She went in the
particular?
clerk's office.
Excuse me.
It's okay. It's like, well,
So what are you up to these
Oh, isn't that?
days? This and that, okay, yeah, a lot like me.
No audio. Why does it say no audio up on the?
You guys still can't hear us, correct?
I'm on the Real Estate and Open Space Committee still.
Okay, good.
So that's
Can you
been
guys
fun and interesting.
Hear us now.
And I'm still on the board at APCC.
Can you hear us now?
Good.
So
Can
this
you
is
just
my
hear
last year. I'm term limited there. Yeah, so
Okay,
that'll be.
Can you hear us
I
now?
got you now.
so I need
Yeah.
to talk to.
Can you hear us now?
Great.
Yep.
Ah,
Yeah.
Were you,
Talking around.
were you actually right? You were correct?
Yeah.
No.
Well, when he didn't hit every button on the screen.
Well, that's one of the best ways of doing it.
That was the third one
I
down.
just ruined my computer though. I
Joyce,
hit
you
something
got
that
I
that's
figured it out. That went good. Nice
I
work.
figured.
Nice.
I'll get on the chin this summer.
Yeah, lots of.
So Peter messed it up.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, it takes a village. Awesome.
Clover and.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, okay.
Especially for the Cape.
Oh, great. So,
Yeah.
Success has many
so,
failure.
Yeah, a lot of people are gonna have to do that, I think.
well, then we had,
Or plant something else,
we
you know.
had three doodles running around just trashing. So, anyway.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. I think we're live and transmitting and recording, and welcome everyone to the October Harwich Local Planning Committee meeting. Thank you for everyone for being here. Try and keep it to an hour and be super efficient this evening as we keep rolling along. Why doesn't everyone, since we have kind of we'll go around and introduce ourselves. We can start here.
Jeff Handler from Harwich, Vice President of this incredible committee. Thank you.
Peter Gorey, I live in Sisson Road and grew up here, graduated in the 90s.
Bernadette Waystack, just as of last week, an educator in the Harwich Monomoy system. No more. I'm done.
Congratulations.
Can I go on record in saying when Chief LeBlanc drove me home Friday in the fire truck, that was
That's cool.
a donated auction item that we bid on and paid for. So this way, it's out there that, well, yeah, because someone did already
I know.
say something about that.
I have you know your daughter thinks your grandchildren should have ridden, not you.
Oh, yeah, well, that was the idea. I think my husband thought when he had me bidding on it that it was to be for them. But I said, well, wait a minute, I go to school. I want to ride in a fire truck. And then so we concocted this thing for my last day that we did that. So it was great.
That's good.
Congratulations.
Hi, Brian.
Please, another chair.
Very good. I'm Margot Fenn. I am a retired professional planner. Worked for a number of years in the 80s in the town of Chatham, and then when the Cape Mission was created, moved over there to be chief planner, and then eventually executive director there. So I've obviously got a great interest in this, both as a citizen and as a retired professional.
I'm Ed McManus, a retired selectman, amongst other things. And way back in my education career, I actually got a master's degree in community planning, which I never used. Because at the time, President Reagan was defunding all the federal planning programs, and the streets of San Francisco were knee-deep in out-of-work planners. So I worked as a carpenter all my life.
Oh, wow.
Nice, that's good.
And involved in local partisan politics.
I'm Joyce McIntyre. I'm delighted to be your chair from our last meeting. I, too, am a Harwich native, also graduated in the 90s, proud Rough Rider. Live in West Harwich off Lower County Road. My son is a first grader in elementary school.
Great. I'm Jim Nickman. I live down by Red River, and I'm one of these folks who have owned a house for 44 years, but really started spending all my time here after I retired and enjoying it. My background is economics and public policy, but I work mostly at the national and state level, so this is new to me in some ways. Locally, I'm the president of the Friends of the Harwich Council on Aging. I have a real interest in aging. I'll try not to let that bias my views here, but so that's what.
Jim has kindly volunteered as well to serve, go take some notes at the Housing Authority open
Forum.
thing at 7 at the Cultural Center. So if you need to scoop out whenever you can,
That's good.
please do.
I want them to remember they should think about senior housing.
Well, thank you for going and taking notes, because we'll put you on the agenda for next
I
time.
may join you over there as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, both take some notes, and we'll have it in the next meeting. We'll have some consensus. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Brian Sheld from East Harwich. I would say an active summer resident since 1980 when my in-laws bought property in Harwich Port. But my wife and I raised our family outside of Boston in a town called Medfield. When I was able to retire from IBM, I was an executive, a partner in our business strategy practice, strategic alignment I did with financial services clients. Retired after 37 years there, and then was pulled back into work by a former colleague of mine who needed some help. And so finally I've retired the second time.
It takes at least 2 tries to get retired.
I think I might actually have it nailed. So, an active member of the community, also similar to Jim with your Council on Aging. I'm active with something called the Harwich Fund. I'm a founding member and chair of something that it's an endowment that gives back to nonprofits that service the needs of the community. So I have a deep interest in giving back.
David Spitz. In 2009, I did something that not too many people do. I moved here for an actual job. Didn't move here to retire. I figured that would come soon enough, and it has. The local census lists my occupation as happily retired, and I'll go with that.
That's lovely. Garrett, you're here.
Hey guys, I'm attending remote. Garrett Curran, Ed, good to see you. I moved here in 2019, live on Bank Street, and I've got 2 kids under 2, and I'm just trying to figure it out. So I'm hanging on. And,
Thank you, Garrett, for being here. And I think even with Garrett's remote participation, we have a quorum. So that's good. I wanted to spend just the first few minutes. It was wonderful to have everyone introduce themselves, which is great. Actually, I do need a volunteer for someone to take minutes, because are you here? Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm here. I don't have internet, so I'm on my phone.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Barbara Nickerson, live in Harwich Port. Been here full-time about 5 years, and for some silly reason, my left hand went up when they asked for a clerk for this position, so.
Thank you for taking the minutes.
Yeah. So I will ask one thing, though, as everybody's been going around, some people are cutting in and out, so I don't know where the speakers in that room are set, so just be aware that I apologize if I've got to ask for a repeat of what somebody has said.
Sure. We'll take some notes too, so it may be minutes by committee
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Perfect, just in case.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. I know you're on vacation camping. So following the agenda, just the first 2 minutes, I thought it was wise as we undertake this endeavor, which is 18 months to 2 years of regular meetings, really a intellectual undertaking that's very strategic and broad and can also be quite specific, just to kind of set the expectations that we can express ourselves candidly. I anticipate, we're really going to be quite the team, and I already feel like a lovely morale sort of evolving, and that, we hopefully structure this committee that everyone has an opportunity to express their views, and even in a sort of respectful, tolerant way, because I know you're all here participating in the committee because of your passion and your enthusiasm for Harwich. So we may disagree, but I think we probably agree more than we disagree. So kind of setting that tone, I think it's going to be good. All right.
Just remember that we all agreed right now.
We're all agreeing our enthusiasm for Harwich. I emailed you, moving on to the agenda, number 3. Thank you, Pete, for typing up the minutes.
Sorry for the delay.
I don't think there was anything too controversial.
Oh, there's a terrible mistake.
Spelling.
Like 99% of other people, you didn't put a K in front of my last name. It's like the New York, you have to think of the New York Knicks.
I'm sorry.
We have a hard time doing that here, so.
That's
No, and I
right.
was worried about
My name is spelled wrong.
Yeah, I figured, and I apologize for that.
Oh,
I
no
was
worries.
trying to find the nomination. So, K. Nickman, yep, K. Nickman.
K, that's right.
And
You can remember that,
Brian.
Pete. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
SCHELD,
ELD. Thank you.
after the Skeld River in Belgium.
Some semblance of the order here, because I'm trying to aspire to it. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
And is there any discussion about the minutes?
I said to Pete, they were extremely on point and yet concise.
Yes.
Excellent job.
Great job.
Good job, Pete. Anyone, we can have a vote to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Garrett, you support the minutes? Cool. Look
I
at us.
support them wholeheartedly.
Nice.
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Thank you. All right, we're doing things. We're moving on to 4,
Can I ask
right
one
on time.
question?
Please,
So,
go ahead.
Did Barbara vote, and did Barbara get sworn? Barbara, were you sworn in?
I was.
Oh, good.
Nice. Do you approve the minutes?
I do.
Nice.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Moving along to the 4th meeting point on the agenda. We can do it in any particular order. We had some assigned reading, which was very helpful. Thank you, Margot, for everyone's participation, deep expertise in this committee, so thank you for all the assigned reading. I thought I love a timer. We would set a timer for 3 minutes and kind of get everybody, just as we're practicing, kind of getting our input. We can go around this direction if you want. In doing that reading, something that struck you, that you hadn't thought about before, kind of related, or that reminds you, something that's still of value as we go forward, can be from any of the documents. You get 3 minutes.
I'll start.
Go ahead, thank you.
The reason I wanted to bring people's attention to some of the existing plans, particularly the housing production plan and the open space plan, is that there is a lot of work and a lot of it's on file, and we don't have to redo everything. I also think that at least the housing production plan is pretty far out of date. So there is some stuff that has to be redone by somebody. I'm not sure. I see this group as being more of an oversight group. We say, what are the big issues facing Harwich? And then we have the consultants fill in the blanks. But anyway, there's been a lot of work done already. So rather than reinventing the wheel, what do we see as being the big issues that face us? So I don't think I was close to my 3 minutes.
No, but that's good. We're getting things done. It's excellent. Thank you. Go ahead.
I've had a similar feeling, and not just with the reading, but since the appointment, is just getting a handle on the scope. And I agree with your point about needs of the community, focusing in on what's the response that the town needs to have to those needs. And I guess maybe I'll get it in a meeting or two, but the scope can be so broad, and I'm just sort of struggling with what the boundaries are.
Thank you.
So I read most closely the open space one, which I must say at times I thought what they were covering were things we were supposed to cover. So it's interesting, and so it's good that you say we might be able to use some of that. But a couple of things jumped on me as I was reading that, and the piece about how it works at the county level. That plan. But it led me to think about things like. I was really amazed that we went from 3,000 or so population to 12,000 over a period of about 10 years in there. And 1960 to 2000, we went from 3,700 to 12,000. What happens if we think there's a possibility we'll go from 12,000 to 18,000 in the next 3 years? Or 20, whatever it is. It's almost like we ought to have some I forget what they call them in the military, but sort of where you work, like you sit down and say, you do a what if type of thing. Because boy, if we grew 50%, that would lead to different types of things we'd have to be worrying about than if we keep increasing by 1 or 2% a year. So anyway, so that impressed me. The other thing that I was wondering is that when you read the county versus us, they sort of say, it's our job to think about what our vision is and what we think the town's vision should be. But then it also says you have to be respectful of the county plan and the state plan, and they say, well, what if we disagree? What if the county wants to double in size of businesses and everything else, but we don't want to? Is that, can we do that? So anyway, it raised some questions to me of what are our boundaries or our flexibility on it. But anyway.
Thank you. Garrett, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can jump in. The things that kind of stood out to me, I thought there was a lot of good groundwork done in the past. I think the areas that we're going to probably need to do a lot of research on, and I'm sure Brian probably agrees with me too, is a little bit of data collection, data aggregation in terms of, just the population, future state growth. One of the things that stood out in the community development strategy was there was an immense amount of research done in order to understand where we are now. And I think we probably just need to update some of that so that we actually have a level landscape of where we should be going and what areas maybe need to be addressed. So overall, I thought the reading was pretty informative, but there's definitely, I think there's going to be some grunt work that needs to be done. So, obviously more than happy to get involved in that and try to make it as simple as possible. And then as far as community outreach, I liked what the town did. I don't know what town it was, but there was one town that sent out flyers. I know there's going to be obviously meetings for community data collection and things like that, but I think we also need to address some of the folks that maybe have growing families that aren't able to get involved in that and trying to find a way to engage them in a different avenue. But that's overall my thoughts. I thought pretty good stuff.
Thank you, Garrett. Barbara, are you in a good space to weigh in?
Yeah, Joyce, let me go ahead and pass on that right now.
Sure.
I'm trying to write everything down. And if everybody could give me your name when you start speaking, that would make life easier too.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's Joyce speaking. I will jump in. And to kind of echo what was said, the 2017 Open Space Report I thought was fascinating as like a really smart, thorough inventory. And, 5 years is not a super long time. And a lot of values were really stated of the town, fairly benevolent, if I put a judgment on it, benevolent values. In considering then the Cape Cod Commission report, thank you, and those kind of guidelines. It struck me that there's potentially an opportunity to be more granular in how we strategically envision the town living up to those values, and maybe under this, since we have the privilege of time and we're also non-binding, you know, we're not making legislation here, we're generating sort of a statement, mission statement for lack of a better word, and a really big one, that we have the opportunity to explore some maybe new, evolving, used other ways, in other areas, strategies to live up to those values. And I think that's a privilege of the committee, and the Cape Cod Commission report really kind of talked about that, which I thought was interesting in terms of kind of giving some teeth or some real specificity potentially to our vision for the town going forward. Doesn't mean they have to be adopted, but it may be options. Go ahead.
Barbara, this is Ed. It's interesting, the two plans, my wife and I, we moved here just after the 2000 plan had been approved. And fortunately, or probably more unfortunately, I lived through the 2011 plan, and it was not a pretty process. It was a lot of fighting between the planning board and the board of selectmen and various groups in town, and basically I think wound up leaving the town in a position of really not making much progress because of the disagreements. Looking forward, I think, you know, one of the issues that strikes me that we need to do a lot of reaching out to the community and different stakeholder groups is getting to a point of understanding what the vision the town has for itself. And then from that, a lot of the other things, I think, are fairly clear in how to lay out. In reading all the documents, one of the things that was interesting to me for a town that's over 300 years old, there were very little in the document about preserving our historical assets, which, you know, has been a major interest of mine through the time since I landed in Harwich Center and got snapped up by the Harwich Center groups. And you know, my wife's family, although she was raised in Connecticut and was just a summer kid here, her family goes back to the 1740s, and so I have an interesting feel for that whole process and development. So.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Let me see if I can talk without talking through a mask.
It's Margot.
Oh, sorry, yes, Barbara, it's Margot speaking. The Cape Cod Commission materials that I sent around are basically just sort of descriptive of the process and the most recent regional policy plan, which I think they updated in 2017. And you know, there's no requirement in the Cape Cod Commission Act that towns do local comprehensive plans. It's an option, and there's some incentives to do it. But the whole idea when the Commission Act was created was to try to create an umbrella where there was some consistency from town to town on how we were managing our resources. And so that's why they like to set a framework, and then it's up to the towns what they want to do within that framework, or if they want to do it at all. But I think, you know, I think most of us would agree that there's some benefit to be thinking ahead. I too, like David, looking back through some of these documents, was saying, gosh, you know, there's so much that's been done already, and a lot of it needs to be updated. We should have new census data, I would think, pretty soon available. So that's something that would be pretty important to factor into this. there are a couple of issues that maybe weren't highlighted in some earlier documents, like how we deal with climate change, that are, I think, should be part of our current plan. And so that, and the commission just really added something into its plan about that for the first time in this most recent update. The other thing that really struck me is the importance of trying to tie together the work that we're doing with what the wastewater plan process is doing, because the single most important issue, I think most people would agree, is protecting our water quality. And that's what wastewater planning is all about. And all of the sort of growth assumptions that go into, not only assumptions, but projections that go into planning for the infrastructure that the town is going to build, are based on what are your land use policies? How much growth do you want to allow? What's the zoning gonna say? So somehow we need to integrate those two processes. And I confess I have not been following what they've been doing very carefully with the wastewater plan, but I think we need to as part of our work.
Thank you. Bernadette?
Barbara, this is Bernadette here. It's daunting. There's a lot of information there, and I feel like I've just skimmed it and haven't digested everything. Very much appreciated Margot sending us that piece from the commission. It really helped kind of outline things easily. Something I think you said, Jim, about it says in that piece that she gave us, the regional policy plan says we don't have to mirror theirs, but we shouldn't be contrary to it. So that was something that's, there's only like, it's sort of throw all the spaghetti against the wall, and this is what's stuck so far with me.
But something better stick, I guess.
Yeah, the vision statement too, it's top of the whole plan, it's top of probably part of what we have to do, and I keep reminding myself, it's not just the vision of the 11 or 12 people here, it's the vision of the town, and how are we going to get that, and community forums, and such. And to Garrett's point, there are people either elderly or tied down with 3 jobs or with young children, or many of those things aren't necessarily going to be able to come out to meetings, but things as simple as a survey monkey survey that people can hopefully, that people's voices can be heard, and that's going to shape the vision and help us, I guess, figure out where we go to find data and pull other places and extrapolate stuff from some of the other committees and boards that have done some work. And I think that a lot of this is going to become easier and clearer for us when we have a consultant on board.
Yes.
But I think it'll be very interesting seeing that, the effects of COVID are probably going to have affected our community, and they're going to affect this plan unlike any other that's come before it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, it's Pete, Gory. A couple of things that have already been said that I wanted to echo. One, I think, without getting into the politics of climate change, climate change is affecting Cape Cod, no matter the source of the cause of climate change. And I think that personally, a thread of how we react as a community to climate change across writ large, evidenced by things like the drought and our water quality issues this past summer, I think there has to be a thread through most of what we do, at least acknowledging that we're faced with it, whether we like it or not. So I agree very much, Margo. Thank you for that. I think a couple other things, and I think Jeff and I agree, we just chatted at the beginning about some of this stuff. I think personally, I like the structure of 2000 better than the 2001. I thought it was, I don't know if it was more ambitious, but it was more.
You mean 2011, just to clarify?
2000 versus 2011,
Yeah.
if I said that.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
That was just a personal, maybe first, the structure of the document, which is more
Okay.
blocking and tackling, but I think that's
Yep.
part of our job too.
Yep.
And then I think that it is important that, what was the other piece? And I know this is going to be a big point of today's conversation. I think that we have to go beyond the regular groups, something that Barbara just touched on, though we need to touch every group, from groups that operate out of this building to the chamber and the HCT and other groups, housing advocates and otherwise, and our elected officials at the state level, and bring them into some of these conversations too, you know, and we can probably break up that work to get their thoughts. And sometimes, you know, maybe politicians aren't the right ones to you know, give their stump feelings, but maybe you can get them in an unguarded moment and try to feel for what they're hearing out on the campaign trails, as an example, you know, because they might touch more people. They're out there knocking on doors, and you know, maybe they'll sanitize it, but maybe they won't. You know, I have faith, again, politics aside, in people like Sarah Peak and Julian Sears, who talk to more people than perhaps we do. So, and they hear from, or maybe they hear from more people than we do. So.
Thank you, Pete. Jeff?
Yeah, Barbara, it's Jeff. I'm sorry, yeah, Barbara, it's Jeff here. The benefit of going last is I could almost just basically say what you all said. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to add a little, if I may.
Please.
Ed, you hit a couple really key points for me, which is the history of our town. You also hit the 2011 plan, because as I read this and tried to dissect it and cut it up, I had a real hard time finding anything in here that got accomplished. And maybe that's unfair for me to say, but that's how I assimilated and then viewed this document, is what actually got done. And now that I find out from you there was a bit of infighting, it tends to, it makes a little more sense to me as to why. I also, talking to Pete, the 2000 framework, I think, is a better framework. Bernadette, you spoke about community outreach, and the way at least I see this from 30,000 feet right now, because I think that's where we all are, is at 30,000 feet. Hopefully in time we get to ground level as a team. But we are charged with representing the majority, not everybody, but the majority of every subcategory, subgroup, sub-everything that our town has to offer this committee. And you can cut it almost infinitely. Age, occupation, you know, so many different ways to cut this pie that, and I think it is paramount for us to be effective, is to do a hell of a job reaching out to the people that we are supposed to be speaking to, or at least developing framework for. I think the efficiency, as I was saying to Peter, it seems to me that the public government runs at a pace that is much faster than town government. So town government's tending to react a lot of the time versus be able to get out in front. And I think that was very evident when I read all of these things, that as a town government, there's a lot of reacting going on and band-aiding versus getting out in front of something, creating a plan and having it be followed through on. So, you know, I believe we should be thinking about working from the inside out, meaning our town and our townspeople, versus starting to cherry pick things. Obviously, wastewater is vitally important. It is right there, and I think a lot of what we're going to put on paper is going to have wastewater as the overarching theme. But at the end of the day, if our town internally in this building isn't functioning well, and our townspeople aren't being heard and represented, I think we'd be kind of aiming at the wrong target. What a perk.
Well
And
done.
music plays.
Well done. Which is an excellent transition
Yes.
to the next point on the agenda,
Did
which,
Barbara get to go? I'm sorry, Jess.
oh, do you want to go, Barbara? Thank you. Peter, thanks.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Keeping me
You all
honest.
made most of the points that I've thought about. Are you there?
We're
Yeah.
here
We're here.
with bated breath.
Okay, well, I had a lot of gobble on my end. I'm concerned about being able to reach out to all the different groups that we've talked about. And I think it's going to be one of those meetings, different groups, and somehow being able to draw out what their concerns are, because I think people are so busy with their life right now and dealing with the results of the pandemic and everything. A lot of people have shut down, and if we don't get the input that we need, then we're not doing our job like we should be.
Awesome, thank you. It's all a really good transition to the next point on the agenda, which is kind of 20 minutes open. I was kind of envisioning this is everything is fair game. I think we've all really said that like hearing from Harwich, broadly defined, is really important. I think I included in some of our pre-meeting minutes, I thought it was interesting, it popped up from Shrewsbury, like, oh, interesting, this is one way that the consultant who we're going to get be able to work with was reaching out by mail. That's just one example. That may not be in our budget, or it may be something we're interested in, but I thought that was an interesting way of doing it, of here's the town's vision statement, how much do you feel in alignment of this, what are the priorities, one way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it on social media, which of course has bias that I think we agree is going to come with our, there's a standard, and we look forward to working with our consultant. Mr. Powers also, he's preparing for the housing meeting tonight, so wasn't able to join us, but reached out that hopefully he has some good news to share with a tool, basically kind of what you were talking about, Bernadette, based in the town hall, web-based off the town hall website, to be able to solicit feedback, so sort of a validated tool. So we don't know specifically what, but he's hopeful that that will be coming. So in our 20 minutes here, I kind of envisioned anybody you can think of that you think is pertinent, and the point of this is not to really weigh who's more important than less or whatever, but just because that's some more planning to go forward. Anybody you can think of. Garrett started to talk, and we can just throw it out there and it'll go in the minutes, and this can be an open discussion for about 20 minutes, and Jim's ready.
I just asked a question in the sense of everybody,
Yes.
but it's interesting, there's sort of a difference between vision and wants a little bit, and I like reading some of the stuff about these surveys, I thought it was about wants as opposed to vision. And I hope a consultant can help us figure out how we get people's vision and not just, I visited my daughter who lives in Belmont this weekend, and about 60% of the houses had a sign. Half of them were, we need a library, I want a library now. The other half were, we need a skating rink, I want a skating rink now. That wasn't vision. That was what was in their minds. But
Sure.
So I hope we can get beyond just wants.
Sure. Let's toss it out. So, I mentioned the survey, different ways of doing this. One group, and to anybody listening at home, we're going to try and include everybody, but if you feel like some representatives, we're missing some vital demographic, we want to hear from you via town hall. You can track me down or any member of the committee, so if anybody's listening. Just to throw out an idea, just to get juices going, I would like to hear from some of the community groups that are involved in the historic Cape Verdean population. That's somebody, and we can talk about how we're going to do that and in what forum, but that's a demographic I would like to hear from. So everyone jumpstart.
Expanding on that, the BIPOC community, as small as it is here, and
Which community?
BIPOC, Black, Brown, and then persons of color, Indigenous and persons of color, and the immigrant community. Again, and as chair of the Harwich Cultural Council, I have said this straight out to my group as many times as we've talked about. We have 2 open seats on that committee, and I'd really love it if we could find people who were less white, less female, and less old. But that's a lot of what the demographic majority of Harwich is. But that doesn't mean we don't look at, even more importantly, the outliers and the smaller communities. And I know from living and working in the schools, we have, for a really white place isolated down here in this peninsula as we are, we have a significant range of kids from a lot of different places, whether they're first generation or came here themselves. We have Haitians, Dominican Republics, we have Jamaicans, we have Vietnamese, we have a huge amount of Brazilians for the last 15, 20 years, as people know. So there, and I think a lot of those people are still gonna feel or be marginalized because it's a smaller slice. So it's probably extra important to try to get those voices heard.
This is the time everyone can jump in.
Yeah,
A
I
group you
guess-
want to hear from that feels important.
Well, I'm concerned about what is becoming a silent but very large majority. It was interesting to me recently to see that there's such a large percentage of part-time residents in this town. You know, and it affects our personality. In fact, I remember looking at one of these documents that talked about how relatively few number of long-term visitors were spent, and it might have been 2017. And that was, it certainly was pre-COVID, because now we've got a lot more people spending longer periods of time, but maybe that'll change in another year as they go back to work.
And he was complaining that causes traffic. Remember that?
Yeah,
Because people
so,
come and go.
right, that was the complaint, but the flip side of that, and is that, I think, I was looking at the field cards. Out of 15,000 residential tax bills, 9,000 are sent to non-Harwich addresses. 9,000 to non-Harwich, 6,000 to Harwich.
I'm
And how
surprised
does
it's
that
not bigger.
impact the vision? Bernadette, I love your point about the underserved minorities, but I think, we have to have an inclusive vision. Otherwise, whatever, I guess my concern is part of my passion of being here, is I feel like without charting a course is going to happen to us. And we just need to figure out what that course ought to look like.
This is why the census, I think, will be very important.
Yeah, I agree.
So we can also find out from the beginning of COVID to now, what second homes have now become first homes.
Exactly. Or
And
what's the
that's-
mindset?
Well, absolutely.
And what's the
that's gonna
commitment to the
impact
town? And, yeah.
Wastewater, our school, our public services, our police, our fire, so forth and so, yeah.
And actually, you're hitting on
Please.
something else. I mean, as we went around the table, and maybe this is my challenge with the scope, is do we need to start to compile a list of issues that needs to be inclusive somewhere?
Potentially, yes, but we're going to start with this group. We're like, yes, I think it's
Okay,
related
at
to
some
who
point.
we're hearing from. Yes,
Right, okay.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we need to sort of build
Yeah,
that story.
and so I would love to, who we're all have sort of community ties. Who do you want to hear
Yeah,
from? Who do you want
got
to
it,
make
yeah.
sure we?
No, I agree. I don't want to get
Yeah.
to the answers. But
Garrett-
Barbara, that was Brian speaking.
Garrett, Barbara, anybody?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah.
Barbara, you want to first? Good.
Okay. Go ahead, Garrett.
Sure. So the good news is the census data's out. I've got it up right now. I think they've even updated it post first year of COVID. So we've got some updated numbers and estimates in July 2021 on this data. I'll send it to the group. Joyce, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Can disseminate it out. But one of the things I was thinking about is, we got to also make sure that we're reaching out to the business owners.
Yes.
that are-
Yep. Right on.
Good point.
Could-
Obviously, there's
Could we put some specifics on that if anyone wants to toss out some organizations?
The chamber's probably.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Chamber,
I think of just, in Harwich alone, I think there's registered, let me see here, just looking at the census data, there's over 421 employer firms
Got
in
it.
Harwich, registered in Harwich. So I think identifying, everything from the local, the local grocer and market down the road, like Cape Roots, right? All the way to some of the restaurants and bars and what their input is. Even, some of these family farms and other registered businesses that are trying to make a name for themselves on the Cape and more specifically in Harwich. I just don't want to lose sight
Yeah,
of
that's a great point.
some of the folks that drive that seasonal crew that comes in,
Yeah.
that drives revenue for the town, and then also obviously participation from folks that come outside, just like Brian was talking about. Those are two things that stood out to me, and then obviously we've got a whole slew of different committees and community organizations here that I think we just should get an inventory on, identify that we have at least representation
But when you think of businesses, do you also think of plumbers and carpenters and stuff like that?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Because-
absolutely. And we can easily pull a lot of that registered data on public information, and we can start to say, hey, even if it's a self-incorporated person who maybe has a finished carpentry practice, I personally want to know what the heck they want this town to look like.
Are they included in the 421, do you think?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
If
they
they're
may or
registered
may
in
not
Harwich,
be.
they're coming up in the census.
As long as they
Oh,
have.
that's what it says, how they
Ed.
report.
What is also interesting on these census numbers is, in terms of non-minority or minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses,
It's a lot.
the number is so little that it's not even commented on. It specifically has an S, which means there's not enough data to say it's worthwhile to talk about. So I think we probably need to do a little digging and find out if that's true or not, but that's something to just bring to the attention.
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to dig into how they come up with, how they define and determine the 421 registered businesses. Because I would imagine it's overlooking an enormous number of people that are self-employed. I know when the Fed does their projections and community profiles, if you're not incorporated or an LLC, or if you don't employ people, you don't exist as a business or as an employee.
Yeah.
Which
I think you said they had to have employees.
which
on the list.
which really affects how the state distribution
Yeah.
formulas affect
Other-
our state aid.
Makes sense.
There's
That makes
another way to
sense.
get at it, though. I agree, we're not gonna get the LLC. I have an LLC, and I'm sure I'm not recorded anywhere. But I think what we could do is the field cards, again, the taxable addresses, and at least identify the business establishments that are
Sure.
taxed as a business. That's one way at it.
Specific groups, like Jim, you're so involved in the, Brooks Museum. Specific names, like the Harwich Historical Society. Can you think of others? The Brooks Museum.
Well, you're getting into the whole historic area.
Yeah.
Just all, like,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the names, all the stakeholders.
Yeah.
How about
That's-
Harwich
You know.
Ecumenical,
Yep.
the HE?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's 90 nonprofits
The Hash.
identified in town. We
The
should
Hash.
look at that.
0?
9-0. Some of them are family foundations, but we certainly could go through that list and identify.
The community center.
Yeah, Council on
Well,
Aging.
Yep.
And then you have, there's got to be an education, children's
Of
oriented.
course.
And one of
Of
the
course.
one of the nonprofit groups that has had a tremendous impact on town is Lower Mid Cape Church Homes. It's the
Okay.
developer
So
of
the
the
ec-
Pine Oaks.
Developed Pine Oaks and-
You know.
Mid Cape Church Homes. Okay, so the ecumenical, that also
And they're also moving.
specific. Is there a Harwich ecumenical
There's-
There was
yes.
a Harwich
association of the
Ecumenical-
churches?
Yeah, there was a
religious.
clergy,
Okay,
there was a
clergy
obviously
group.
I've lapsed from Catholicism and everything else,
The-
but
but the
I was
clergy
aware.
group in Harwich.
There
Yes.
was,
Yes.
and probably still is the Harwich clergy group.
There's a difference, this is David, there's a difference between identifying groups
Sorry, I called you Jim, by
and
the way.
reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
As we go through this list, we are weighting ourselves down to the point that we're not gonna be able to function.
No, we're not gonna, so this is just casting a wide net. We're gonna plan around this, but like thinking creatively in this, like a limited 20 minutes, and then encouraging other input as well to kind of think broadly. We're not
Well,
gonna,
I think listing these groups and identifying who they are is huge. There's already a couple of things I wrote down that I hadn't thought about.
Agreed.
The outreach strategy that we adopt is going to require some direction from this group before we start reaching out.
Agreed,
Right.
agreed. We're starting with a big basket here, and then kind of gonna, I think, move forward in terms of focus in the basket.
And then, you mentioned, the businesses, and you talked about the Chamber of Commerce, but there's also Harwich Port Merchants Association.
That's
and
what I
then
wanna
there's
hear. Mhm.
All of
A lot
those,
of the others that
all
are
of those businesses
associated with
along
you.
Queen Anne.
Okay,
The landscapers.
do they have
and,
a, yep,
that I'm not necessarily sure they
Okay.
identify with
No.
being a merchant or being a
Right.
part of the chamber.
They,
Yes.
they don't, right, they may
Yeah,
not be
you know.
participating members, I mean,
Yeah.
that's still a
They're
place
just
you
trying
can
to make a
start.
living.
Yeah.
Well, let,
Um,
I add, yeah, on that then, and it's, I guess, it's two-edged sword. I think you have to at least invite developers in,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because they're huge employers,
Yep.
and for better or worse, they're largely increasing the tax base. And they'll have plenty to say about how the town works, right? And then also some of the things that they're faced with, like, because it's another thing, it's kind of like that feedback loop I was talking about with elected officials. They're hearing from people who are looking for homes, what is important to them about not just the tile on the wall, but, you know, what are the resources for the town? Why are they picking Harwich over Dennis?
So Cape and Island Board of
Oh.
Realtors
Yeah.
too, they're.
Okay.
Realtors are for sure,
There's a huge
Looking for
bunch here.
homes as well as also commercial
both ends.
Right.
Yep.
opportunity.
Go ahead.
Some other obvious ones, I mean, you know, the Harwich Conservation Trust. I would say some of the healthcare, nursing home, you know, the people who are doing medical services, because that's a big part of what we consume. And then I don't know if, in my mind, I just find a lot I learn relative to aging from the fire and police departments. And so I don't know if we can go to pieces of the town. And I think the senior employees in the town have a lot to
I put the teachers in
vision.
there as well.
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at.
But I will say, just from past experience, I think, and to your point, this is Jeff, by the way, I think it's really important to not get bogged down in too much work, but I also think that we have to find where that boundary is. But if we're going to talk to any groups, associations, any kind of communities where there's one or two people speaking for a large group of people, we have to be very careful about that.
Yeah.
Because many times, and like I said, I've run into this face first, you're speaking to somebody thinking they're speaking for everybody. And the true reality of it is there's not a lot of consensus about how things are happening. So, but in the theme of not getting bogged down, it's gonna be a hard undertaking. You know, this is gonna be an awful lot of work, but this is what we signed up for.
Yeah.
Margot, you had mentioned wastewater, but are there specific?
Well, I guess what I'm struggling with here is you know, you can basically create a list of everybody in town here. But then, as David says, you know, how do you come up with a manageable way to try to approach all of those different constituencies? One of the, I may be taking us off course, and you can cut me off if I am, but one of the things that concerns me is that normally when you would undertake a process like this, there would be some professional staff and then a consultant to work with the professional staff.
I think they're coming,
And
hopefully. Yeah.
I really think we need that.
Yes,
Yeah.
agree,
Yeah, yeah,
agree.
yeah.
We all agree.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
and we're,
but we'll
and,
get it when they hire a
I
planning
don't think
director.
this can fly unless we have.
oh, agreed,
Right.
agreed.
That's-
I
So do we have
agree.
any indication of timing on that?
We were hoping by, I don't want to quote him, but I think if we all remember, even by the first of the year, Mr. Powers was saying, right?
That's going, I would suggest to our chair, that's going to require some active follow-up from you.
I will keep working on
Because
it.
these things can slide.
Sure. I think I agree completely that there's a lot of brain power in this room, and to use it for good, we have to sort of laser focus, and professional staff will help us with that. But I don't want us to underestimate, however, I work with a lot of consultants, how much local knowledge goes to when properly paired with a useful consultant. This is not a plug. I mean, Harwich is unique. I mean, we're not all terminally unique, but Harwich is Harwich, right? And there's a lot of local knowledge here. If we can sort of laser focus that with the expertise of professional staff, it'd be really effective.
I've spent a career as a consultant. They're not the end all and the be all.
All right, we have 3 minutes left, so let's make sure we get everybody. Go ahead, Bernadette.
And this is not semantics so much, and because I'd be as guilty of using the same phrase, but rather than talking to, it's going to be listening to.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know,
Have to get our listening
with or
ears out.
without consultant or
Yeah.
paid staff on hand, maybe at some point we can figure out a way that we can schedule listening tours where a couple of us go to the Thornton Room at Brooks Library and we advertise that we're going to
Yes.
be there to, and maybe, and a couple of us go to a chamber, or we talk to city, and it's true, that does not get every business.
Right.
You ideally want everyone from the single fisherman down at Saquatucket to Quasit and everything in between, but listening to, and this is because I'm saying it to myself.
Well,
I have to be listening to them and.
Last point, I think that is so spot on, because in my run for selectmen, people would constantly tell me, no one ever listens.
Yeah.
No one ever comes out and listens to the things that I need people to listen to.
And as you said, when you listened or talked to one person, you thought they were representing more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll hear from lots of people, and then we probably distill from it, the
Absolutely.
consensus of most of that demographic, the consensus of that group.
I'll just suggest, and Barbara, it's Pete, I'm typing a list while you're probably feverishly taking notes, but a couple of regional ones. The Cape Cod Commission, obviously, APCC. I
What's
know
the
there's
APCC?
Association of Preservation of Cape Cod.
Yep.
Arts Foundation.
Yep.
And then actually, some of our neighboring towns, right? Like there's, we're thinking about
Pick their
physical
brains.
planning.
Chatham, Brewster, Dennis.
Yeah, maybe doing a charrette around, what are the physical interfaces or other planning things like that.
Actually, it was amazing how many overlapping issues we have in one of the reports. They, like Pleasant Bay, it belongs to everybody. And so
Yeah, I think Long Pond the same way.
Yeah.
There's-
Let's not forget the LGBTQ. That has been brought up to me last week, and they were a group was trying to get some recognition in Harwich Center, and nobody from our town hall got back to them after multiple attempts. So I think that we're casting the wide net.
Yep.
Tell them they're not alone.
From Mr. Spitz himself.
That's right.
Veterans, yep.
Say I'm
Yeah.
almost
Cast the
Yep.
wide net.
two polls,
Well put.
but,
Yeah.
yeah.
But, and, as we have the groups, there's certain of the groups we've talked about, quite honestly, can be approached like the human service agencies, we can be addressed in a group. And I know the comment you made about somebody speaking for an organization, especially a neighborhood organization, because I know for many years the fellow that was in charge over at Great Sands Lake, nobody agreed with, but he was the only one that would show up and do any work, so everybody let him do it.
All right, we've done great on our agenda. In our last 2 minutes here, just to remind everybody, I apologize again for the confusion about the meeting time. There was an error between how it was posted in the agenda, and Town Clerk Emily wisely pointed out that we had to meet at the time that was posted, even though that was not the time we thought. So, we are booked for the first Tuesday of the month going through June. Obviously, that's modifiable, but we are booked from 5 to 7. So I would anticipate this meeting will start at 5, 5 to 6:30, 5 to 6, depending on what's on our agenda. At the very least, 5 to 7, which is a long meeting. We obviously can accomplish a lot in an hour. So next meeting will be November 1st at 5. We're booked for the Griffin Room, but that may change. This is intimate too. There was different opinions. Go ahead, Brenda.
Just be aware of the May meeting, it's way out there, but the May meeting would be the second night of town meeting, so we probably
Oh,
will
okay,
not
we will
meet
modify
May.
that, but we're at least
But we don't
written
have
in
to worry
green
about
on the
May just yet.
calendar.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, can we get a motion to close?
We adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. Quickly.
Please, Pete, yes.
If we're going to have meetings through the winter, right, and some of these may be sessions, they'll be in addition to our regular meetings?
I would anticipate,
Okay.
yes.
I just wanted to make sure we're all managing expectations. 'cause
Yeah,
that's-
we're gonna have
that's what I
we're
thought.
gonna have a strategy, and obviously, we're gonna try to be as smooth with using our resources as possible.
You gonna come?
Yeah,
of course.
I would anticipate that.
I just, I
Yes.
saw that was the
Road
case.
is-
It's not
And-
because they're from school, I think.
And one comment.
Isn't 204 Sisson?
The point that David.
Is the old,
The point that David made about are the hiring of a consultant may slip and
I'll
to
keep
to
working
stay
on
on
it.
top
Well,
of
you
it.
give me a bone and a dog.
Having some experience of this, if you have a relationship of any of the selectmen, keep on poking, prodding them, because
Appreciate that.
they are the town administrator's boss,
Beautiful.
you know.
And thank you to the volunteers who were going to go to the housing forum meeting.
Sure.
We're just trying to
Please,
find out where it is.
please, yeah, it's
Second
at,
floor library.
the,
That's what I thought,
no,
library
not at
or
the
culture?
library, at the cultural center.
202
The
system.
204.
The 204 is what they're calling it.
Now,
All right,
now
did we vote to adjourn?
Of course.
Just before you get there.
Let's
Yeah,
vote
yeah,
to
right.
adjourn.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, Garrett, for being here. Thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, have a good
It'd be
vacation.
interesting for you to ask. When we think of vision, is it the vision of the year-rounders or is it the vision of the year-rounders?
This is
and-
the thing, and how does it get so dilute that we don't ever really say anything?
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so it's sort
Yeah,
of,
yeah, we're doing it
I
though.
don't know what the answer is.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so it's right beyond.
Take
the
notes, because you're gonna be
Yeah,
on the
right across-
agenda to give us a
Right
summary.
across the street from the fire department.
So Joyce, is your understanding
The
that
old
you're
middle
going to
school.
simultaneously?
That's what I said, yeah. That's what I